waiting for the host to start.
Okay.
Okay, just making sure that.
Yeah. 49204. Shouldn't be anything that's correct. Is it? It should just be answering some would you rather type questions. And so in some of these sessions, like, you never know how many people are going to be in, so you got to prepare for different setups. So,
What's the purpose of
so
this?
icebreaker is kind of so. It's nothing major. We can say it out loud. Be more quicker. Would you rather be constantly sticky or itchy? You can do it out loud so you want to
Had to be speaking.
sticky. Okay. Really itchy. Okay, cool. I would say sticky. Itchy is kind of tough. Would you rather have to shout all the time or whisper all the time? Yeah, I don't like shouting either. Would you rather eat a whole jar of mayonnaise or a whole stick of butter? Is that the one you said it was hard?
No, I was talking about the movies and books or internet.
Okay. Okay.
Mayonnaise
Okay.
would be easier to eat,
I'm gonna say butter because I would probably just say, oh,
right?
That's true. That's true. That's true. Okay. I go with man. Yeah, that's a good thought. I say mayonnaise. Would you rather sneeze all the time or have hiccups that never end? They are very brutal. For sure.
I grew up with really, really bad allergies, so I know what it's like to sneeze all the time. I'm gonna go with hiccups.
I'm torn. They're like hiccups, like they really bother me. Like, I cannot get to my next thing. I would go with sneezing all the time. Would you rather be able to speak to animals or speak every language in the world? Me too. Every language. Be like Pentecost, right? Would you rather wrestle a bear or wrestle an alligator? Why alligator? Oh,
I've seen other people do it. I know the proper, I know the proper
It's
technique.
possible. I
I
think
think
that's
do it.
it.
the bear is more.
Yeah, I've seen people wrestle alligators and they.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I was about to say, I've seen people wrestle alligators. I've never seen anybody wrestle a bear.
It's not even funny, but it is. That's true. Would you rather live in a world without books or movies, or in a world without?
Period. How do you access it? It doesn't specify that.
Yeah. I'm going without them. I'm good with books.
If you have access to books and movies via the internet, I go internet. If not, then I go books and movies.
Yeah, that's depends on like. You could go down a rabbit hole with that one because if you don't have books and you don't have movies, then those don't exist on the internet, right? Are we talking about the internet that we have now, right?
This is what we have now.
Probably go with the internet.
Would you rather be the center of attention or blend into the
I'm good with either, really.
I'm good with either if I am comfortable with what's going on about knowledgeable and educated on the topic.
background?
If
Okay.
it's something I'm out of my comfort zone, but I'm sorry, I should have.
I was just saying, you would either.
Go with either. Okay. I would go with. I'm typically the center of attention. So I'll go with that. Would you rather live in a world without pizza or a world without tacos? Without tacos. All right. We're just doing what you rather. Little icebreaker. I would say, yeah, we have pizza every Friday for movie night. So I'm good with no tacos. Well, I'm good with without pizza because there's several different tacos that I like. I like steak tacos, chicken tacos. Would you rather have the power to squirt ink like a squid or spray like a skunk when you feel threatened? Ink like a squid. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I probably would.
Okay. Cool. All right. So, well, good. Thank you for participating in that. That's something I used to do when I was a teacher. But it's typically having to take an actual quiz. But it gives you an idea of what other people are thinking or where they are, how they're feeling about things, typically. So I really appreciate that I'm here because this is the first time that I get the opportunity to actually speak on something uh, in a small group setting, live setting. I'm typically doing it live on the internet or something like that. And so, who I am, and we'll be able to see this. Let me simple presentation. Um, Dr. Elijah Glenn. I got my degree in management uh, last year, so I just recently became a doctor. So, and trying to enjoy that as of today, right?
Congratulations.
I appreciate that.
Accomplishment.
I appreciate that. It took me like about 6 years. Like 6 years. It took probably about a year off, year and a half off, based on a couple of things that I had to take care of. And then, as you can see in the small picture, I have 4 kids. You have Gianna, Joshua, Ethan, and Jordana. Uh, the 13, 11.
You like B, right?
Huh?
You like the letter B, right?
Why is that?
It's a joke because
Oh.
they're all starting with the same letter.
Jim.
Oh, Gianna is with a G.
Um,
Yeah. Joshua with a J. Ethan is with an E, and Jordana is with a J. So that's a good point to talk about because when we were coming up with names, we didn't think that it was a letter that's being connected to the other person. Not until Jordana was about to be born did my oldest daughter. She said, "Why don't we just find the letter name for Joshua?" And at that point, we had not even thought about that it had happened. It was just miraculous, really. And so we started looking for names, and then you got to narrow it down to a letter. Like that even becomes more challenging. And so we came up with Jordana. And the crazy thing is that at the time there was it's an eyeliner has Jordana on it, and my late wife didn't even know that until she saw it that like some months after.
Isn't it interesting how those things pop up?
Yes, absolutely. And so back in 2021, I lost my wife, Jen. I became a single father. But just to talk about her small moment is the reason why I'm even doing Humble Dad, right? Is because with her, I was having, you know how you have those moments in life where you're just struggling and then you need an outlet, but you typically sometimes don't get an outlet. Well, she told me, she's like, you need to get an outlet. And so I was like, okay, well, let me do something on the internet, see what's missing, see what I can bring to the table, so to speak. And so what I did was I said, you know, I love being a dad, and I want to see what other people are doing as being a dad. So I began to interview dads, and so since then, that was 2020. I've interviewed over 100 dads to find out how do they parent and how could that help me, right? And so we'll get into that a little bit later. And then God, he did a good thing, and he brought me somebody not too long ago. Miss Kendra, or as my daughter calls her, Miss Kiki. And she's been very supportive in the journey through grief. But not only that, she's been super supportive with the podcast. One of the things that she does, she gets on live. I do live shows Monday nights at 8:45. So if you go on YouTube, you can just type in Humble Dad. And right now, we're talking about how to stay married. And so I have a panel of 8 people that we talked about how to stay married. But in other sessions, we've talked about fatherhood. And I asked different questions around that. And she's typically in the chat. I don't know if y'all pay attention to podcasts, but chat is where it's at because you get to say whatever you want to say, right? So you get to hear some people's authentic thoughts, right? And so she's in the chat, and so that's really good. And then not only that, she always encourages me to continue it and be consistent as well. And she's very loving towards my kids, which can be. She treats them like they're hers. And so, my kids, I call them my rock stars because they have ministered to me through the process of my grief. But at the same time, before Jen even passed, like we would always have fun together, right? But not until she passed did I see, because of what we had poured into them previously, was able to be displayed through the loss of their mother. One of the things that I did every day, pretty much, I would say at least 4 days out of 5, we would do a morning Bible study. And I would not explain the lesson. We would read the text, and then I would ask them what it is that they see in the text. And then I centered what they saw or what they heard, and then I began to kind of build the Bible study around where they were, right? And so as a result of that, some of the things that I learned was that when I asked them later, I said, what would you rate me as a dad? Have you ever done that? Have you ever asked your kids to rate you? Would you ever?
Oh yeah.
Okay. It's a good thing if you're trying to be a great dad. And I asked them, and at that point in time, they were, I don't know how old they were, but at that time they gave me a 6, right? And I think they were being generous. Okay. Even though because to give a 6, and I gave me an explanation, and one of those explanations was how I communicated with them. And this was before I was doing the Humble Dad podcast. And so I said, okay, give me an example of how did I communicate ineffectively to you. And my older daughter, who's very eloquent when she speaks, and sometimes, I don't know if y'all have 13-year-olds, could be disrespectful at times, right? But unintentionally at times as well. So, but nevertheless, so she says, it was a time that you asked me to do something, but mommy had told me to do something. And you was like, just do it. That's what I said. Well, I'm the man of the house, so you do what I say, right? Not gathering enough information in order to give a better assessment, right? And as a result, I gave her a discipline that she didn't deserve, right? And so she remembered that, and I had to come back and apologize, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so that's how Humble Dad began. It began because there was a space missing, I felt. And as you men think about the TV shows, what's some TV shows that you remember with dads?
Full House.
Okay, Full House.
I mean, I'm a product of the 90s, man.
Okay,
So
sure.
pretty much any of those shows.
Any shows in the 90s, okay?
What's it called? Family Matters.
Family Matters.
Facts of Life.
Facts of Life. All right. If you pay attention to them, most of those made fun of the dad. The dad was the butt of the joke. If you look at commercials, dads or men are the butt of the joke, right? It's never anybody else other than the man that's the butt of the joke. So, and this was a revelation to me through my wife at the time that she was saying these things. And I said, okay, well, I want to be able to build something where it's positive things talking about dads. And so that's how it began. Now, the name Humble Dad came about because I was looking through a sea of adjectives, and it was the one thing that I wasn't, which I'm not that humble, right? Unfortunately, God has humbled me, and I'm a work in progress. So the name came from something that I aspire to be, which is show humility, right? And through that process, like I said, I interviewed over 100 dads. Johnny was one of them. I don't know if y'all know Johnny, but I think that's the reason why he had me in mind for this. So I appreciate that. And so then I was like, what would my title be and things of that nature? So the title really came to a point of because of the fact that things are missing. The way that people have talked about dads has not been a positive one. And so I wanted to get people's attention that dads matter more. And I gave the ... for people to put their own aspect in it. Okay, so when you heard the term dads matter more, think about that. I'm gonna ask you, what was your thought process when you saw that? So some of the things that I'll let you look at it and read it. Some of the things that I gathered from these 100 dads uh, were, it was more than 7, but I put the most important ones that I remembered because I couldn't go through 100 interviews in this amount of time. And these are not in order. Okay, these are not in order. So number 1 is be intentional. I think sometimes as dads, some dads, because you're in the house, you believe that you're doing your job, right? Some dads are like that. I've met some of those, but you need to be intentional about how you're going to be parenting your children, right? A guy by the name, I think you remember the show Growing Pains, Michael Seaver. His name in real life though is, what's his name? Michael Seaver.
Isn't it Alan something?
Yeah, Thick,
Yeah.
Alan Thick.
And who was the guy that was on the little bad kid that was the oldest son?
Oh, you're talking about Cameron.
Thank you.
That was the old.
Thank you. So he came to our church. I attend Cross City right now. I'm in between churches, and came to Cross City, and I'll never forget the statement that he said: "Remember that you are parenting someone else's spouse." And so when I heard that, I was like, okay, I have to parent intentionally, knowing that someday they are going to be married to someone else, hopefully, right? And prayerfully. Then the other thing was care about what they care about. So one of the things that my kids like to do is play Roblox. Right? I don't like Roblox, but I played it and I just couldn't. I told them like, listen, man, I'll do something else. Right? But Roblox is not something that I do, right? So one of the things that I do with them, I like my daughter, she's writing a short story. So I talked to her about her short story. I have my son that he's trying to code a game. So I talked to him about coding his game. My 4-year-old, she's more affectionate. And so she wants to talk about me hugging her, or she wants to talk about Paw Patrol. I don't know if y'all familiar with that, right? Absolutely, right? And so, and then my son Ethan, he is now telling me that he wants to be an inventor. He wants to be an inventor. And so I try to center around the things that they care about and do what they like, often as you can. I know some parents, what they do, they'll say, okay, let's go play outside, but that's not necessarily what the kid wants to do, right? It's important for us to enjoy or be a participant in what they like to do, because that's where they feel more love, I would say, right? And as I said before, apologize. Have y'all apologized to your kids before?
Oh, yeah.
What did you see?
I think it's very important.
Tell me why.
Just because it shows like you two are failed, right? Like you don't know it all, and I mean, it shows that this is how you should be. Because if you don't apologize for your actions, right, or mostly wrong, right? If you don't apologize for wrongdoing, you're in a sense teaching them not to do the same.
Correct. That's good. Anybody want to add to that? Why would you apologize to your kids? Because I was raised where I don't remember my parents apologizing to me.
And I've heard a lot of people say that. Like, I don't remember my parents ever apologizing. Like, you could tell if they felt bad if they did something or whatever. And I think maybe my mom was a little bit better at that than most people who came from a single mom home. But even still, I don't remember that happening much. But tagging on that, like, I want my kids to know, hey, everybody's going to make mistakes. This is the proper way to recover from that. Right? Like,
exactly.
I've messed this up. Here's how you fix it. And it starts by acknowledging I've messed it up.
That's good.
Right.
And taking ownership of it and saying, here's what I'm going to do to be better at that.
An action plan.
And what I'm going to, hey, I shouldn't have yelled at you like that. Instead, I should have asked you what you were doing, why you were doing it. And I'm really sorry that I didn't. Will you please forgive me?
Okay.
And then it's teaching them to, like, how to forgive. My daughter's 5, my son is about to be 4, and they're little. Those are important things to see so that they can apologize to their friends, to their teachers, whoever, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Did you want to add anything, Casey?
I think it also opens the conversation for, I just know when, with my boys, that a lot of times they're like, well, I said I was sorry, but they didn't forgive me. And then you can segue into that conversation as to, well, it's not necessarily about the individual and then kind of accepting your apology or forgiving you. It's about you doing your part and making sure that you're taking ownership for your actions. You can't control them. You can only control yourself, and it kind of opens up, even more opportunity for additional conversations that are somewhat related.
That's good. And then I connected to, as far as like when we talk about forgiveness or asking for forgiveness, I like that you said that will you forgive me? Because then that also will lead you back into the scriptures, right? Where, we need to ask for forgiveness, right? Not only that, we have to forgive others because if we don't forgive others, how can we ask God to forgive us? And that passage kind of comes to mind. And so that's good. So then I also found that, giving grace and mercy, but then also telling them that, listen, this is what could have happened. This is probably what should have happened, but I did not do that. Okay. Even though you were bad, I'm still going to do, or you did something wrong, I'm still going to bless you. That's how you want to say it. Then I'm still going to allow you to have this, right? And so what that helped me see was, because I talked to my kids about, listen, I want to be as fair as possible, because I know that God can punish me for every sin that I commit, right? And so I try to look through the lens of, man, God, okay, how should I discipline my child and this particular child in this particular event? And sometimes I would say a lot of times it's hard, but that's what I'm trying to do, right? Because there are some things that I can react to, and I can discipline them in a way that it probably was overreacting, right? As opposed to, okay, should I take away something? Should it be, a corporal punishment? Like, what is this calls for another conversation? Like it's that constant reminder or understanding that God is my Father, so I know how He deals with me, and so I want to be able to deal with my kids in the same way, so that they see God that way, if that makes sense, right? And then discipline out of love.
No, so like that's a big thing for me is the discipline, right? And you were touching on discipline. So like I was raised, my mom was hard. I was raised with switch. I had farm life, right? No, early on, I swore I would never corporal punish my child. Like I know they talk about it in the Bible, and I know that it's a thing that has its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find most of the time is corporal punishment comes out of frustration with ourselves, not knowing how to handle the situation. And so we reach for what we know is like, I'm going to punish you instead of working through the process of having to communicate. And I think that's where a lot of us fail when we get to that point, like you were talking about earlier, like how should I approach this? How should I show the consequences? Because it's really consequences of actions. It's somewhat what discipline should mean something else. Discipline should mean dedication to something and like focusing on that, right?
Okay,
right?
Yeah, I see.
So, it's always consequences. So that's what we try to do, because in my experience, very little good or positive comes out of corporal punishment because it's never done with love. It's always done out of anger, mostly anger with yourself, and that you didn't know how to handle the situation, and you just want your child to just do what you say, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad that you said that.
That's fair. These are things that I'm learning. Okay, this is not what I've accomplished. Okay, these are things I'm learning. And then have fun with your kids, whatever that is. One of the things that my kids enjoy doing is going to, and we have only done it once, going to Great Wolf Lodge, or going glamping. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
We've been to Burleson a few times, And so that's what their fun is. They like being able to get out of the house, spend the night somewhere else, and just do whatever is out there, right? And so, and I got to be able to plan financially to be able to do those things. So, but I want to make sure that they're having fun. And then what I did, I went down to them specifically, and I said, what do you want from Daddy that we can do to have fun together? What is it that you like? And they, of course, they're each gonna like something different. Whereas, like with my 4-year-old, she wants hugs and cuddles, right? Or she may want me to play in the big, we call it the big room with her with some of her toys. My son Ethan, he wants to play video games together. My 11-year-old, who he gotta be 16, his thought process is like is very mature. My fiance Kendra calls him the man child because that's how he thinks. And he just wants to have a conversation of what it's like to be a man. That's what he enjoys. Okay. I said, what about going outside playing? And he's athletic, right? So you would think that he wants to go do something athletic. No, he wants to have a sit-down conversation about being.
He's intellectual.
Yes, he's very intellectual. Yes, all of my kids are for sure. If you meet him, you'll.
So that's the realm that he likes hanging out in.
Yes, that's the realm. That's the one that codes.
Mhm.
Right. That's the one that codes, or learning to code, shall I say? And then Gianna, she likes to just be able to chat, talk about what's going on in her life, or just me sitting down next to her or being in the same room doing what I'm doing. Those are things that she likes. So I would encourage you, if you're not already doing that, find out what it is that they like specifically and have fun doing that. And as I said, I said dads matter more. What's your thought when you hear that? Dads matter more.
It means I win all arguments in the house with my wife. That's what it means.
He said what?
It means I win all arguments in the house. With my wife.
Okay. I win all the arguments.
That's my trump card right there.
That's what. That's funny. What about y'all? What'd you think when you hear it?
I don't know. I don't know that I had an idea. Like I wanted to come and what does that mean?
Yeah.
Responsibility.
When I saw it, I was curious. I'm curious as to see what the rest of that statement is.
Yeah.
But from being in here in the beginning, it seems like dads matter more than maybe what they're portrayed.
Right.
Correct. The reason behind it is because I know as a, podcaster, marketer, whatever business person you want, titles matter at the beginning, right? People usually read the cover art or whatever to decide on the brand thing. And before they say, oh, okay, well, if the words don't look good to me, I don't like the font, so I'm not going to go. So I wanted to go with something that would capture people's attention because I had a purpose to talk to them about dads matter more than they are portrayed. That's exactly what it is. And so, but I wanted to go to some stats as well. I don't know. Hopefully I can see these. These are.
You can enlarge that.
I'm trying to.
So look, this arrow right here, just click on that.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
There you go.
And I had this working earlier. Technology is what it is. Like I had it where y'all couldn't see none of this, and then I can't find that way. But nevertheless, so I was doing some more research, and these are some of the things that show the importance of fathers. I don't know if y'all know any of these stats. Have y'all seen any of these stats before? So for those that are watching online, it says in 2021, the Bureau revealed that there are 18.4 million children that live in fatherless households. And then it says households without fathers are 4 times more likely to live below the poverty line. And I'll show you some a little bit more stats on that in a few moments. It also says children of fatherless households are 2 times more likely to drop out of school. Adolescents from fatherless households are more likely to commit crimes. And children growing up without a father are 2 times as likely to commit suicide. So in the educational world, just so you know, I was a teacher middle school teacher for 11 years and an adjunct professor for 8 years. And in the middle school, I don't know if y'all know this, but they decide how many prisons they're going to build based on the third grade statistics, meaning how many of them are being raised by a single mom.
Interesting.
Okay, so and then not only that, if it's a single parent in the system, I'm saying mine, but in the system, it's a tab, not a tab, but it's a mark that says at risk student if they are being raised by a single parent, right? So what that means, at risk, they're at risk for doing any of these things. Okay, so that's how important a dad is in the household. And so, just for those that like to go research, I put where I got my data from. And, it's a short link, but you can just type in fatherless homes and it'll just pull up. And then I had to want to make sure I'm not running out of time. This was obviously in 2009, but it's kind of prevalent as well. It says that reveals that divorce is a major cause of absent fathers. I understand that people, I'm gonna just say my stance. I don't believe in divorce other than biblical matters, right? It does happen, and I get it. And my personal opinion, the scripture says that the reason why we come together is to procreate and to be able to raise those kids in a biblical fashion, so that so that it can be multiplied, right? And as you can see and you'll see further that when a kid comes from a broken home, it's harder for them to get to where they need to get to. And I'm a product of a single family home, and I definitely know that I had my identity. I struggle with my identity. I struggle with knowing when I had did something well. I struggle with my conversation with people in general. I struggle knowing how to hold my tongue. I struggle in not lashing out just because somebody disagreed with me. I struggle from structure, discipline, in the way that you was talking about, how discipline should be about the process of getting somewhere, right? But as you can see, 43% of fathers don't consider their role to be as significant in a child's life, in their personal identity, which, if you look at it from a biblical perspective, our identity is found in Christ, who is our Heavenly Father, right? So for people to think that fathers don't play a role in the personal identity, I wonder where that comes from. It would have to be, not have to be, but in my mind, it comes from the media and the things that we consume. Because as I alluded to earlier, if you think about the fathers that are put on a screen, they are usually seen as incompetent to a degree, right? Or they were not necessarily the head of their household. They were like
Comic relief.
Yes, they were comic relief, right?
Your Homer Simpsons, your Peter Griffins.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, you can name them. I mean, any show pretty much, unless you maybe go back to Father's Knows Best, is the one that I remember, that he was the one that was giving the instruction and the discipline and things of that nature, right? And it wasn't a comedic relief on him. That's the only one that I can remember, so to speak. Yeah.
Started to take that shift in the early 90s. Like you start, I mean, his father's shows actually did, like Family Matters with Cameron. Like his dad was a psychologist, and like he instilled.
Family Matters?
No, not Family Matters. What's the one that?
You talking about Growing Pains?
Yep.
Growing Pains.
Yes.
Yeah. So like he was a psychiatrist.
Yes. That was like early 90s, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And
It's
then
like and then it shifted
Mm-hmm.
to
Yes.
comic relief.
Yes. So that, and this is, all of these are my opinions, but so that there could be a divide in family, right? Because if you take the man out of the house, then you have a situation where the woman is having to kind of defend for herself, so to speak. All right. And not only that, it makes more money for the government for there to be a broken home. I mean, prison system, I think they said it was in the billions, maybe like $18 billion a year or something like that in prisons. And then if you have separate homes, that means you have separate rents, separate mortgages, right? And then, of course, separate cars, obviously, but then there's so many different things that are separate, right? But if the family unit is intact, that's really where the growth comes from, economically, emotionally, spiritually, especially if the man is leading the way that he should be leading, right? And this was a stat of all stats that I had seen until this week when I was studying. That 72% of America's population believes that fatherless homes are the biggest social problem in the country. So if you look at that stat, that means obviously close to 3/4 of the population believes that it's the problem, but they don't realize they're contributing to the problem. Meaning, if your focus is not being with the mother of your child, right, then you're going to live differently. Like in our society, it is, sex before marriage, sex before everything, right? It is what is being consumed. And so if I get her pregnant, oh, okay, well, if she decides to keep it or not, then I don't want to, it doesn't matter to me. When in fact, the stats show, because I was on the board at Mid-Cities Women's Clinic, I don't know if y'all familiar with that, but they help women come to the decision of not wanting to terminate the pregnancy, right? Can't say the other words because YouTube will censor you and things of that nature. But what they said was that if the father is in the life of that woman and says, keep the baby, okay, 80% of them change their mind. That's how influential a man is in the developing of that child coming to be, right? However, as you can see in the country, don't believe that we believe that that's the problem, but don't think that we should be saying anything, right? So that's why it comes back to that dads matter more than what's being talked about. And if we wasn't that important, why are they targeting us?
One could say that the people are seeing the error of their ways, right? Like, so, I mean, just like anything, when we do, we learn. So therefore, while we talked about the shift of in the early 90s when it went to comedic relief,
Yes.
right? It was all like empowering women, like single moms are the best, like there's no other child better than a single mom, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the thing,
Yes, sir.
the mantra. And so now we've gotten to the point where now we're seeing the results of that and we're realizing, hey, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at.
Yeah. It depends on what realm you're in. I hope that's what it is. I think there has began to be somewhat of a turn. I think the last 2 to 3 years, for sure, that there has been a change. But there's also that if it's a minority, it seems to be the majority, but they're pretty loud in saying, I'd rather just not be married. I have a kid, but I'd rather not be married.
I mean, that's a result of it too, right? I mean, there's still people that believe that it can be done. And for some, it can be done. I mean, it has to be done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have to do. But I mean,
yeah. And so, but that's the thing that I'm saying, that to the men, I'm saying, listen, when you decide to, part of being a man is to build a legacy. Part of that legacy is finding a wife, having kids, and pouring into them productive, I say disciplines or biblical, from my perspective, biblical teachings that will last to the end of time, right? And so this particular stat, was astounding to me. Now there are, I think it's like, I can't remember the number. I want to say it's like 15 million. I want to say about 15 million single moms, I want to say. And then there are about 1.2 single dads, something like that. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know, but they typically, the court system typically is going to give the child to the mother, right? They're going to give the child to the mother. And even if she is not financially stable, I think it's in Atlanta or in Georgia that the woman gets the child regardless. Okay, and so the man doesn't have the leverage at all, right? Which is crazy because as we're looking at the stats are showing that they need to be together, one. But even further than that, I don't know if y'all seen this, but it was a TED Talk where this lady was talking about how a single dad is equivalent to a 2-parent household. Because most men, I'm not talking about immature dudes, right? Most men have structure, right? They're going to have some type of, they're going to have some type of, I don't know what you said, consequence maybe, is what they're going to have. They're also going to be affectionate, because I know for me that once Jen passed, I had to make sure that I was more affectionate in appealing to where they were at the time, right? And I'm also logical. Men are more logical than women. That's the skill. That's the thing that God gave us, right? Logic versus feelings. We kind of coincide with one another and we balance each other out. But it's better to be logical than it is emotional, right? And so as a result, what you're seeing is that they know that the powers that be know that if I give it to the kid, if I give it to the mother, I know that she's going to be in poverty for the most. 23%. That's 1 in every 4, right? It's going to be in poverty, which means that I know because they're in poverty. Then we got the jail system, we got the criminal system. So then that also means educational system.
You got welfare system, you got all this.
All those things. Thank you. Absolutely. Whereas I'm not trying to make it better, but just saying it's only 12% of single dads are in poverty. It's like 1 in 10, right? It's a totally different stat, right? So I'm only saying this to explain to you and those that may be watching or ever listen that dads are that important. And more importantly, they need to be in the household, right? And I didn't know if it was going to be women in here or not, because I was going to kind of talk to them about if the dad is not even able to be in the life, he chooses not to, then you need to get him involved around men.
Really, we're the wrong audience. Our wives should be in here. That's really what I'm going to tell my wife after I leave this.
That's funny. Well, that's true too. But these are some things y'all may not have known, right? Because also as dads, we also need to be able to see that here's a kid that doesn't have one, right? And we need to be a little bit more understanding, but also be discerning and figure out how can I help in that way. Because I know that not until I got into the space that I began to make sure that I was pouring into other young men, whether it's my kids' ages, even when I was a teacher, or it was the men that I talk to now, because I'm a part of a pretty big podcast now that I have to. It's crazy because I'm in a secular space trying to talk to, in my demographics, these Black men that are literally engulfed in what secular culture says is right. I'm trying to tell them you should get married and then start a family. I'm trying to tell them. So think about having to have a conversation with someone that opposes you. And this is every Tuesday night, pretty much, right? So I'm saying that hopefully you'll take this and you'll spread it to your circle. That's really what it's kind of about. But it would be good for women as well. And then we got the scriptures to back it up. We have scriptures, Ephesians 6:4. Fathers, this is for us, right? Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Right? There's a word discipline and also instruction. Right? 1 Timothy 5:8. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. When I read that, I was like, this. That right there is tough. because if you're not providing for your family, then what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, that is exactly what we are here to do.
That's been a reminder for me as well as a Christian man, like not just my home family, but my family at large.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be Christ in my family at large.
Absolutely. That's good.
Nieces, nephews.
Yes.
All of it.
Yes. And that's convicted for me too, because I'm out of the classroom, so I haven't been able to have that much of an outlet on the young people as I did before. And so I got to do that as well. And then Luke 15:20 says, and he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And that's about the prodigal son, right? So here's a dad that gave the kid everything that he wanted, and when the kid went to go squander it, but his dad was still compassionate enough, right? Was still show compassion, and threw him a feast. But then you had the other sibling that was jealous, right? So in that scripture, it's a lot of things to take away from. But if I highlight and look at the dad, the father in that story, of course, it was a representation of what Christ does for us, but it was also to see as earthly fathers say, listen, your kids are going to do some things that you did not even teach them to do, right? How will you treat them as a result of them not necessarily following your teachings? We should welcome them and show compassion towards them, because that, if anything, will lead them even closer to you as well as back to the Father. And then last scripture, as a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. Psalms 103, 113 and 13. So those are the scriptures that I had. I didn't know how I was going to go, so I'm going to end it here because they told us we kind of wrap it up around this mark. And so that I wanted to leave it open to any questions or comments that you all had.
So you were talking about your children going out and glamping and how they really enjoy that. One of the things that I like to do is I'm really into like primitive technology and things like that.
What is it called?
Primitive technology, like stone tools, that sort of thing, right?
Okay.
And like connecting to nature. You know, a lot of people that I hang out with who are really big on connecting with nature.
Okay.
And there's something that I'm learning in the spiritual connection between like nature and God. Right? When you get away from this. So I want to offer you a book. It's pretty interesting. It's called The Mutant Message Down Under.
Okay. On my card, I think my email or something, can you send it to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what it is it was given to me by this guy, David Holiday,
Okay.
who he is a primitive instructor. He's trained, if you've ever watched any of the Alone series or Dual Survivor, any of those, he's the guy that trained these people.
Oh, wow.
And he's like a nomad, beautiful spirit. He's forget what denomination he's associated with, but he's very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And in that Mutant Message Down Under, it talks about, so this lady, I'm going to preface it like this. So this lady from America goes to Australia as an outreach, creates a business, and gets kidnapped by the last native tribe and is forced to walk. Well, I say forced, I'm saying this all in air quotes. Forced to walk across Australia with them and learn their ways. And it's not just about primitive technology, it is a spiritual journey.
Wow.
And just the connectivity of God through their eyes. And just like, I believe God is way more than what we can fathom as human beings.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's just a really good book.
That's good. Anybody else want a question
So
before we get out of here?
List of 7 that you gave us.